It is time for the Cyber Executive Podcast, where we'll be talking with the top industry experts about risk, technology, and leadership. I am your host, Marc Ashworth, and today I have the pleasure of having my good friend, Roftiel Constantine, who is the CISO with Wehmiller, and he is here with me today. Rofti, thank you very much for being a guest on this latest episode of the Cyber Executive Podcast.
Well, Marc, thank you so much for inviting me today. Quite an honor, and big congrats to you, by the way, for starting out this podcast series. I think it's a great job to highlight a lot of the good things that a lot of us are doing.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. I've had a lot of people encourage me that I should do this. And so I, finally made the decision, I guess I should say, to do this. So it's been fun so far. And of course, it's always nice to meet new people as well as, get all of, my friends like yourself on here to talk and, tell that message around security or leadership or whatever it might be. So it makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think one of these days we'll have to get you on this side of the mic, right? And have someone interview you, because you've got a lot of great leadership. You got a lot of great business examples of how you and your team have been supporting all of your critical business users as well. So don't count that out. Be sure to add that to your agenda for the year.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to do an AI version of me interviewing me. Maybe we'll do something along that line if I can figure that out.
Why not? Yeah, cutting edge.
That's right. So, Rofti, I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard of Wehmiller. So, can you give us a little description of what your company is all about first, and then we'll kind of start deep diving into your brain here and start picking at it and really get things going then. So,
sounds good. Before I talk about my company, I'll talk a little bit about me as well. I have kind of I think I don't know if it's traditional or non-traditional career path, but after college, I did join the U.S. Air Force. I needed someone to pay for university. I didn't have a whole lot of money at the time. So I got an Air Force ROTC scholarship, which is really nice. They paid my 4 years of undergrad. And part of that deal is you owe 4 years of active duty service. And I didn't know much about the Air Force at the time. So my plan was to do my 4 years and then leave. But as the 4 years started getting closer to the end, I realized I really kind of liked this thing. This Air Force was a lot of fun. The work was really interesting. The people I was working with were great. I enjoyed the travel. I enjoyed the moving, because we move a lot in the military, as a lot of you know. And I thought, let me just try out one more assignment. And then that's when they offered me an opportunity to go to Germany. I was there for 5 years. And, I kept staying in. And before I knew it, I had 25 years, Marc, in the U.S. Air Force. I couldn't believe it. It was just a great ride. I saw no reason to leave, other than the fact I was getting older. And I knew that if I was to be interesting for a company to hire me, then I need to kind of put a stop to this Air Force thing and get out there and try some real industry type of work. My main focus in the Air Force was generally IT, but a lot of us in the military towards and when I got out, it's about 10 years ago, a lot of us had already been moving towards cybersecurity. And that's what I was in for the last couple of years. So transitioning into my current role as a CISO was quite easy. Actually, it was really good. Anyway, I retired out of Scott Air Force Base right across the river here from St. Louis in Illinois, and looked around and joined the company that I'm with now, Wehmiller. And we are a 13,000 person strong company. We're international. We have offices and factories in about 25 countries at 150 locations. And we are in the manufacturing business. We don't manufacture end user products. No one's ever heard of Wehmiller. Very few people here in St. Louis have heard of us, because we don't make things that people use. We do make machines that make things that people use, and we sell our machines to very famous, well-known companies that will produce a lot of things. One example I give, Marc, is we don't make the Amazon box or boxes, but we do sell our machines to large companies like WestRock that do have the contracts with Amazon to build boxes. And our machines that they buy, for example, will take a 10,000 pound roll of brown paper, convert that into corrugated, which is the proper word for cardboard, by the way, as I've learned in this company, corrugated. And we'll have a machine that will do that. Another machine will take the 10 by 10-foot square of corrugate. It will fold it. It will cut it. It will paint the Amazon swoosh on it. It does it all automatically and at super speed. So we have a lot of engineers around this company. We have a lot of service technicians also. That's another main line of our business. We sell these big, expensive machines that have to be running all the time for our customers. And so we have, I don't know, a couple thousand service technicians, again, all around the world. Our customers are everywhere. We sell everywhere. And we also sell spare parts to all those machines that we make. And so those are some of the main lines of business. Yeah, so we are very international. About 2/3 of our operations and people are here in the U.S. Next big chunk are in Europe. And then we do have a strong foothold in China, India, Japan, all over there in Asia.
So, in other words, what you're saying is your company is every kid's dream that could make the biggest cardboard box that any kid would want to play with, is what you're saying. So,
close. What I will tell you though is that it is pretty cool going to a lot of all of our factory floors. Of our 150 locations, about 50 of them are actually factory floors where workers are bending metal and screwing in screws and actually making the machines, and just seeing all the different areas that we service. It is really interesting. I mean, something as simple as taking a whole stack of paper of letters that have been printed out, and then over here a whole stack of envelopes, and our machines will take these letters, fold them 3 ways, and then put them into the envelopes. Something as simple as that, though, is a huge piece of machinery. Just when and then they hit go as when they demo it to us, Mark. It's just amazing watching how fast these things work. That's every kid's, including my dream, is watching that stuff. It really
yeah.
is impressive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is all. I love those Netflix shows where they, how they make this and that sort of things. That's to me, that stuff's just as fascinating as anything. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, as a global company that does a lot of acquisitions, and you talked about, 150 locations and all that sort of things, do you provide guidance to those other companies in that portfolio, so to speak, or do you set the policy and enforce it with collaboration? How do you work with that in your environment?
That is a good question, and we are the verb is acquisitive. We are very acquisitive. I mean, we acquire a lot. Another word I've learned here at Barry Wehmiller, acquisitive. And we have definitely grown through acquisition over the years. We do about 10 acquisitions each year. Right now, here it is, almost middle of March. I'm sorry, middle of April, where we've acquired 4 companies already this year. Um,
Wow.
and yeah, and each one comes with its own challenges. Each acquisition is unique. But in general, when we buy a company, we study it for a long time. I mean, oftentimes multiple years before we decide to purchase. We purchase with purpose. We purchase where we believe that this new company, this new set of people and services they provide, or just whatever capabilities they might bring, they fit in. They fill a gap that we know that we have either upstream or downstream for one of our existing services. We purchase the company and we plug it in the right spot in one of our 4 major platforms that we divide our company into. And so, from my standpoint, from a cybersecurity standpoint, I and my team are responsible for the entire Barry Wehmiller IT enterprise. We're responsible for protecting the data, for ensuring the services, the IT services and systems are up and running all the time from a security standpoint. And on day one, when that acquisition occurs, it's under my team's responsibility to protect as well. So, yeah, to answer your question really briefly, when we buy a company, then and we acquire a company, then it becomes mine to protect on day one.
Yeah, so interesting. So, I as you're talking here, I'm kind of reflecting back on some of the previous episodes, and a lot of the previous guests were all in highly regulated healthcare, or in myself, I'm in banking or whatever it might be.
Right.
So I would think there's some different types of challenges as in cyber for you in an unregulated industry? Can you elaborate on some of those challenges?
Yeah, in fact, one more little piece of unregulated space that we operate in at Barry Wehmiller is that I didn't mention, we're family owned, we're a private company. So
Hmm.
we're not traded in public, we're not in Wall Street at all. So we don't even have Sarbanes-Oxley. Yeah, we're right. We're not in banking. We're not in healthcare. And I'm sometimes I'm jealous of my peers like you and others here in town because you guys can point to regulation where it says, "Hey, we actually, no kidding, have to do vulnerability management. It's not an option, right? In order to operate each year, you have to do all certain things. Well, in manufacturing, you don't. Like you said, it's largely unregulated. We operate in Europe with a lot of our customers and team members in Europe. So we have the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, ever since May of 2018 to think about and to follow. We do a little bit of credit card, not much credit card transactions. So we have some PCI. And some of our HR team members, they have access and they process a little bit of HIPAA, not much, a little bit of
Hmm.
personal health information. So we have very loose, very light regulations that we have to follow. So what that means is that a company like mine can ignore security, cybersecurity. They can, and they did. We didn't have a security team until I started as the CISO back in it was 6 years ago, almost 7. It was at
Hmm.
the tail end of 2018 when I got hired into this role. Before then, Mark, we had people on our IT team that would do a little bit of security with their normal duties, as system administrators and network administrators and others, and service desk doing a little bit of security, but it was never anybody's sole job and responsibility and daily function to think about security. And because we didn't have to, and we are an expense at the end of the day. And so finally, we decided to get serious about it. I think one reason I'd been selected for the role is because coming from the military, my first 3 years here, I complained about the lack of security around here. And so someone finally said, "Hey, Mr. Complainer, how about you become our first CISO and fix some of these problems you've been harping about for the past couple years?" So that's kind of how I got into this role. Doesn't hurt to complain a lot, I guess. And so back to your question about the unregulated part. So what I have to do is I have to fight to get everything. By fight, I mean I have to fight for the dollars, fight for the recognition that what we're doing over here in the security team is really serious, and these threats are really real. They're not just academic. They're not just in a classroom type. Gee, this could happen to us. No, it's really happening to people, to companies, in the world around town, that type of thing. So I have to come up with strong business case justifications for every new system or initiative that I want to take on. And I get a lot of scrutiny over what I plan to do in these business cases. They're heavily looked at because, as you know, Mark, cyber is not cheap. A lot of these systems
Right.
that we get into are pretty expensive, and they're also impactful. They're expensive in terms of dollars. To lease software for a couple of years is not cheap. And then often the software, security software that we install on laptops, on desktops, on servers, they're all taxing. They all
Hmm.
take a little bit of CPU and sometimes don't behave well with others. So there's definite impact, not just on the dollars that we spend, but also on all of our team members' daily work. And so we have to be very conscious of all of that. Just adds to the scrutiny that my peers on our IT leadership team here at BW give to me. A lot of scrutiny, a lot of questions asked during the business cases, but we've gotten pretty good at putting good cases together, just capitalizing on the real world risks and real world impacts that are happening to others, and that's the way we've been surviving recently.
Hmm. So going through so many acquisitions throughout the year and so far this year, has this been kind of more boilerplate for you? Do you have this kind of down pat now, or what's some of the challenges that you see in this model of constant acquisitions? I know when I was in healthcare, we were acquiring several practices a year and doctors' practices and bringing them into our group to grow. And after the first, 7 or 8, it got kind of easy to do that and then vary off of there. But, those are small doctor practices versus a large manufacturing facility, which I've been involved with as well. And I know that is not easy to deal with, especially the larger or more remote they are. So what's some challenges do you have? Is this boilerplate for you guys? You just kind of do it and keep going, or what?
So, Mark, I tell you, I wish it was boilerplate, but as I mentioned earlier, everyone is a little different. Everyone that we
Mhm.
acquire is a little. Some are big, some are small, some are 4 or 5 people. That's it. With no equipment, there's a couple of perhaps smart engineers that have a neat technology that we like. Or just a recent one is 100 people in 2 locations here in the U.S. This latest one threw us a curveball because they have 100% outsourced all of their IT to a company and a third party company. And one problem I foresee, we only acquired them a week ago. One problem I foresee coming to the IT team is um, as we slowly take over responsibility for their security and for other parts of all their IT services, for a while here, next couple of months, we're probably going to have 2 sets of people, our side and this third party company side, hands in the day to day maintenance and care and feeding of all this IT stuff going on. And I see some blaming coming up. Hey, you caused that
Yeah.
problem. No, we did. So that's just one. That's the latest little thing we got to work through. And also, we like to buy a company and we like to get their IT integrated into our larger Barry Wehmiller domain. The IT
Yeah.
team always wants to do it right away, but we're not the deciders. The business leaders that are involved in integrating the company, integrating the sales teams, integrating the engineers, integrating their ERP systems. They're the ones that really drive the speed with which we integrate. And often we end up integrating a couple of months down the road. Um, but from a security standpoint, and this kind of gets to the boilerplate angle that I'm really trying hard to make a boilerplate. We've developed. I go back to what I said before. On day one of an acquisition, my team and I are responsible for their security. If they get a ransom attack on day two, it's not that third party IT company. It's my and my team's responsibility. And
Yeah.
so we've developed a time phase checklist uh, of onboarding a new acquisition regarding security. Meaning, here's what we want done on day one. Here's what you would have to get done in week one. Here's week two. These things in week three. Regardless of what the business wants to do, there's some basic security things and protections that we have to put in place. So that has become well accepted. It sells well. Never had any pushback. We've been doing this for about 2 years now, and I'll tell you, it's since it's never the same twice. I challenge my team as we work through these to write down their observations of problems, things that didn't work well, things that did work well, and then we have usually 1 or 2 lessons learned
Great.
activities during and after, just to make sure that we capture everything, all these different thoughts before they get too old and people start forgetting. To always improve on this our time phase security checklist. That is the one piece that I really care about, and I like to think it's the thing that really makes a difference to the company, to the business leaders. And again, that's why we haven't had any pushback on it, just because it makes a lot of good sense, and it really is our responsibility, and they're happy to give that to us. So that's how we've approached that.
Yeah, the lessons learned portion of that project or that acquisition, I mean, which really eventually becomes a big project, is so critical, especially if you have personnel that's coming in or that's becomes part of that transition team to make sure everyone gets their input. And like you said, every one of them is different, so you're going to learn more off of that for each one as you go along. So that's really good here. So
I'll tell you, I think that's part of my military background. After every big operation, small operation, there's a big focus on what can we learn, what didn't go well, what did go well, and how can we improve.
yeah,
And I'm really glad that my company adopts that same approach. And
yeah,
we really do. And it is such a game changer when you have an open forum to talk about, hey, this didn't go well. We made some mistakes, rather than just covering it up because you're afraid for whatever reason that bad things might happen to you. that never happens here. And it's the openness, I think, is key to making those successful events, those lessons learned events.
Very good.
Yeah.
So on that, do you ever look at the technology from an IT perspective that your acquisition may have, and then look at that at your current stack and say, hey, this is actually a better solution of what we have. So let's bring this on as a best of breed, and then adopt this in the overall enterprise then and start running with that versus necessarily you having it and then pushing it down, which is probably a hybrid approach, I would think. But any thoughts on that?
I tell you, we have been, we often come in with the mindset that, hey, we're Barry Wehmiller, we're required you, and you're going to assimilate and follow what we do. Sometimes, though, we're pleasantly surprised that a small company is doing something better than we are.
Mhm.
It doesn't often happen because a lot of the companies that we purchase, they're not doing great. That's why they're up for sale. It is often the case, not always, but sometimes it is kind of that situation. And if your company's not doing well, you tend to kind of put IT, especially security, on the side. And so a lot of these companies have not been investing well in our space. But some have, some are just really good at it. And we're very open to learning new ways of doing things. And what's also, I guess, a byproduct, an unintended byproduct of the business leaders wanting to wait a couple of months before we fully integrate them, is we do get a chance, Mark, to kind of observe how their systems are working and how they're working well for them, which gives us more time rather than just pre-purchase. We do a lot of due diligence before the purchase, by the way, to make sure we know what we're getting into. But
Mhm.
then now we have a couple months afterwards of really seeing, no kidding, how does their system or systems or new or different IT processes and software, things like that, how does that work for them? And is this something that we should consider adopting? And we've changed our processes and technology a couple of times because of what we've learned unexpectedly and very appreciatively from an acquisition. So I'd say we're flexible when it comes to that. We don't have a hardcore, you must do this now approach. Some companies do, some companies need to because of they're in a regulated industry, perhaps. But we're not that way, and we do have that flexibility to kind of let things run for a while. It gives us a chance to observe and adjust our processes if needed.
Mhm. Very
Yeah.
cool. So, with all of this, I would think that your approach towards risk management, and identifying and analyzing, risk, and especially cyber-related risk within the organization, has to, vary as well. I would think as you're doing the acquisitions and stuff, but uh, kind of what's your overall approach on risk management and prioritizing and analyzing those various risks in the organization because you're constantly introducing new risk and which makes it, I would think, difficult to get to a mature state in some ways.
You're right, Mark. Yeah, we have kept for several years now. One of the early things I did when I took over this role was have a risk register. Just something as simple as that, a place where
Mhm.
I and the team can go to enter new risks in our list and define them, identify whatever measures that we're taking to remediate those, to minimize them. Um, and it's a good place to go around budget time when I can, again, when I'm trying to build a business case or I'm trying to put together next fiscal year's budget. I can turn to this risk register and make a reference to it. Hey, this has been our number two risk now for 4 years in a row. It's time for us to get serious about this. There's new technology, for example, that might be able to mitigate it. Therefore, I'm putting in this budget request. But yeah, the risks are there, and it is not easy. You're right with the way we operate. We do introduce some new risks. I believe though with our that time phase security checklist approach, it does tend to minimize and control those risks down to an acceptable level. Cybersecurity is not about eliminating risk; it's just managing it down
Right.
to the right level. My military days, that right level was much lower than today because who are the threats to the military, to companies here in town like Boeing or maybe Mastercard, maybe even you guys?
Mhm.
You're worried about nation state actors,
Mhm.
not so much for my unregulated paper making machines, right? We still absolutely have to worry about a lot of security threats, but they're different. So we're able to take, I would say, a larger. We're able to accept more risk, I think, than perhaps you and some of these others in town that are just more easy, lucrative targets. And that's where the bad guys are going to focus a lot more energy. So I think whenever it comes to risk management, risk tolerance, you have to start by knowing who are your threats, right? So that's also a factor in the way we look at risk here.
Yeah. So I would think, or I shouldn't say I wouldn't think, I know that the riskiest component of an acquisition is that crucial moment when you put those two wires together to allow your environment to connect to their environment. So what sort of recommendations do you have for those that might be getting ready to go through that process to mitigate as much risk before you do that initial connection to connect the two networks?
These days, there's a lot of things you can do. We roll in on day one. We put a lot of security agents on all of their PCs, all their servers, so we can do those vulnerability scans. So we can run. We put our endpoint threat detection and response, our EDR agents on there, so we can see in real time what bad things are happening. We can install. Well, there's a lot of pre work we can do that will not only protect a lot of their PCs and servers and other IT gear, but it'll identify us of the risks. So we'll have a general idea of what we're getting into, and then we can take actions ahead of time. We can say, for example, okay, we don't want any critical vulnerabilities on any of your servers before we connect them to our environment. Same thing with PCs. As an example, there's things that you can do. You can run the EDR agent. You can run the other endpoint privilege management agents on all these devices for a while until you're confident that these are at a safe level. The risk has been reduced enough to where when you do, as you say, plug the two together, that you're doing so in a very controlled manner in which you understand exactly what you're getting into. Um, that's another reason why I'm somewhat pleased that we don't do that on day one. We go with the speed of business. Those guys want to take a couple of months because they're also challenged by how do they integrate the sales teams out there? How do they integrate? Because those getting the sales team members on different incentive programs, getting them all properly aligned, talking about who's going to take over what territory and who's going to tackle what customers. That's one small. There's so many different angles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's one of those things where if you slow down, you end up going faster at the end. And I think it's the same with the IT integration of a new acquisition. Slow down, do your due diligence, study it, ensure that you're at a safe place, and only then, when you're ready and everyone agrees, then you plug those two things together. So there is a lot of pre-work that you can and that you should do as a responsible IT leader when integrating an acquisition.
Yeah, great
And
advice.
I will add, you can kind of tell it's disruptive. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yes.
You still have to keep the lights on. You have to keep everything else on in your larger domain. And then you have one right now. I think we're processing through 3 of these recent acquisitions that we're in various stages of studying and integrating. It's a lot of extra work, Mark, and we don't have a separate team that just does that. We've talked about it. We have just not yet risen to that level where we need to have a separate team that only does integrations. But who knows? We may get there someday if the work becomes just too arduous and distracting.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice. Thank you. So I want to pivot a little bit because we're both in a great organization, and I was once on the board and stepped down from a couple years ago with the local chapter of InfraGard. You're now the president of the St. Louis chapter of InfraGard, and we have the great state of cyber conference that went on last month that myself and Dave Wren co-founded, 6 years ago, I guess now,
Yep.
something like that,
Yep.
maybe longer, which I think is by far the best security conference in St. Louis and stuff, with the content and just the crowds and everything is just fantastic. So if you're listening to this, you haven't been to it, definitely get to that. But can you kind of talk about InfraGard? What is it, and and things that happens with it, and kind of the advantages of being a member of InfraGard? So
Yeah, happy to. First, hats off to you and to Dave Wren, not only for starting up this great State of Cyber conference series 6 years ago, like you said, but also steering the chapter through COVID. That's tough, you know. I haven't talked to you about how it was, but I am certain it was not easy. You had a professional chapter of lots of members that are used to meeting on a regular basis in person. All of a sudden, they're not. They're not possible. And shifting. We always talk about how we shift at work, how our children shift for school, but shifting an organization like that, where it's a club kind of, is not easy to do. So, well done to both of you for keeping the chapter alive and well. Yeah. So, what is InfraGard? InfraGard is a public. It's a public facing part outreach program of the FBI. And there's I think 70, 75 chapters of InfraGard across the United States. We're fortunate to have one right here in St. Louis, and they pair these chapters up, by the way, with a local FBI office, a field office, and we happen to have a field office here in St. Louis. We also happen to have an FBI cyber office, which is just a couple doors down from where I work in Clayton. So we have a lot of FBI capabilities just here in St. Louis. And so when you think of the FBI, a lot of people get nervous. And the FBI recognizes this. And so they have several outreach programs. InfraGard is one of about 10 different programs that they have. But the general goal of all these outreach programs is to make the FBI more approachable, more understandable by business leaders like you and me and others. And so that's one goal that I always tell people is you don't want to meet your local FBI cyber agent when they're knocking on your door with a problem. Hey, you've been hacked, Mark, and you need to know what just happened. That's not the best time to meet your FBI cyber person. And so InfraGard offers a way to get to know the FBI, get to know the local team that supports all the businesses in a FBI region. They're well-defined regions in the FBI, by the way. And so you join this group of InfraGard, and then you get easy access and regular access to FBI speakers that come and talk about various cases that they've worked, and they talk about the challenges that they have. They've got a lot of challenges working on their side, which is one reason that they like the idea of these outreach groups like InfraGard. And so our chapter here is about 400 people strong. We have a 9-member board, and our goal is, and we've been successful for the past several months, to have an in-person, either an in-person or a webinar type, a member-facing event every month. And we've been doing that. And like you mentioned, State of Cyber conference, really, really good. We only have government speakers up there, or academia. We don't have any vendors, which is, I think, a very nice aspect and somewhat unique aspect of that conference. And it draws a lot of people. In fact, this last time, unfortunately, our venue could hold 300 people. We had to stop registration, Mark, 3 weeks before the event took place. And so one of the big obvious lessons learned for us next year is find a bigger location. And so that's what we're hunting for now. But and our chapter is growing, and I'm real excited about it. And it's just a really good way to make the FBI just serve more as a partner. FBI's got a lot of services that they provide. And like I mentioned, they have the St. Louis Cyber Center. What's that all about? Well, InfraGard is one way you find out about that. The FBI is all about and how they're really here to help. It's not just cyber. My last point on InfraGard. Cyber is just one of 16 different critical infrastructure areas that, as defined by the Department of Homeland Security, things like our water systems, our electrical grid, banking, healthcare. There's 16 or 17 different critical areas. Each of those areas is of great interest to FBI and to InfraGard. So, yeah, if you haven't joined, go out to infragard.org and sign up.
Yeah, and it's an easy way to meet others in your community.
The
That's
networking. Yeah,
yeah,
Mark.
you know,
That's a great point. Networking.
because like at the state of cyber, you not only do you have FBI there, you got Secret Service, you have CISA, you have here in St. Louis, we have the St. Louis Fusion Center, which makes up the state highway patrol, the St. Louis PD, all these other groups that comes into there, and so you get to know these guys and realize these guys and girls are just guys and girls just like you, and it's to build that relationship just like you would with like you and I. I mean, it's that same type of thing. You see them in the halls and that sort of things, and you have a great conversation. So a lot of the infant guards in the other areas has that same sort of rapport with the agencies, and so it's definitely recommended. And some of the others groups have because of how St. Louis has been so successful with that, has started having their own conferences, their own webinars, and all those sort of things. And then there's also the InfraGard National that has an annual conference, and a lot of great information comes out of that as well. So it's definitely a great organization to be part of. You get some insights that you might not get necessarily on the public side right as quickly, or get it quicker than what you would have, through the normal media channels and stuff a lot of times too, which is good. So,
All very good points. The networking piece I thought was a great call out.
mhm,
And then humanizing it, like you said,
right.
they're just men and women, just like we are, trying to do a good job and humanizing it. They're part
Yeah.
of the FBI, but at the end of the day, it's all people. And
Yeah.
without InfraGard and similar organizations, it's easy to kind of miss that. But and then you're afraid, but you don't need to be, and that's the humanizing aspect, I think. Yeah, lots of
Yeah.
good calls there, Mark.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I will say, if you're afraid around being in big crowds, I will tell you the State of Cyber Conference in St. Louis is the safest conference because there are more fairly people carrying weapons there that are supposed to be there with that, and so you can feel safe there, which is really good.
That's right. It's a built-in private protection right there, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So okay, so pivot a little bit more here, just to talk some general industry things. What sort of things do you think in the security industry that we could be doing better as an industry?
So one thing, and I do mention this whenever I can when I'm on a panel or talking at a conference. We have a lot of vendors. We have a lot of security vendors. In fact, we wouldn't really be in business if it wasn't for security vendors. They're absolutely key partners. But I will, and it's a challenge that I've put out there to the vendors. One reason that we're short people in the cybersecurity career field is that people don't stick around long. A lot of our SOC analysts, for example, the average life of a SOC analyst career is 5 or maybe 7 years if you're lucky. Why do they leave? They leave because of burnout. Why do they get burnt out? It's because they're following, I believe, and the numbers kind of back it up. They're following and they're working on tracking down too many false positives. I see it on my team. Something looks really, really bad in the alert window of whatever console that they're looking at. Oh my gosh, we got to go chase this right now. This is terrible.
Mhm.
And they spend several hours digging in, and it's just this. It's normal accepted behavior. It's a false positive by our system, whatever it is. So, Mark, that's where I think this industry can do better. Reduce the false positives. You reduce the false positives. You really focus our time and effort on the things that matter. You give people a much more rewarding experience because
Mhm.
after you chase false positives for too long, yeah, you're going to get burned out. You're just fed up. This is just silly. I'm not your value add. Your reward, your human reward at the end of the day just isn't there. But if you're chasing true positives and you're actually kicking out bad guys, that's really cool. And those people are going home at the end of their shift, at the end of their day, feeling much more rewarded. They're much more value added. And yeah, whatever we can do to, I don't know, get better software out there or train us better on how to use their software better. I'm sure we're part of the problem too. But that would be my strong recommendation, Mark, to really get our security capabilities and team members in a much better place, reduce the
Yeah.
false positives that are out there.
Yeah, you think of the old fable, the boy that cried wolf,
Yep.
and it is that exponentially on a daily basis, right?
Yep.
Because the
Right.
systems are crying wolf, and you can't ignore it. You have to go there every time.
That's
Uh,
exactly it, Mark. You cannot ignore it. You
right?
ignore one, it's the wrong one.
It's gonna, Murphy's law is gonna kick in, and it's gonna be that one that you
Right.
ignored. So
And,
yeah,
and as I'm sure you're well aware, a cyber attack can be an existential problem. It can cause your company or your organization to cease to exist, and it does
yeah,
happen. And so we're charging our team members, our SOC analysts, and others. They cannot skip one, but yet we're not providing them great, intel, great data on which to move forward either. So I think that's a disconnect. I think it will, if we can figure that out, it will help kind of staunch the bleeding that we always talk about how there's not enough cyber defenders out there. I think
yeah,
there are. We just got to stop losing them. I
right,
think that's part of the solution there.
yeah, yeah. So what is something you're tired of hearing about in the industry?
Um, what am I tired of hearing about? I was thinking about AI. I'm
That's what
tired of
most of my
AI.
guests have said. So there's
You know,
been
everything these days is AI, and I think 5 years ago everything was blockchain. Blockchain was going to solve everything for us, and
right.
everybody had a blockchain thing on every vendor had a blockchain thing on their roadmap. You don't see that much anymore. No one's talking blockchain. Um, I say it kind of in jest about AI. I am getting tired of hearing it, but I can't stop needing to hear about it because there's
Right.
just so much happening in that field. We ask every vendor, what of every one of our vendors, what is your AI roadmap? How are you integrating AI
Mhm.
into your software to make your system better? And hey, back to our last little topic there. How can you use that to hopefully reduce some of your false positives? How can you make our work better? Um, yeah, so as much as I'm getting tired of AI, because it's in every conversation, but at the same time, I think it needs to be, Mark. It really
Yeah.
does, because it is having such interesting uh, impacts that change all the time. You have to stay up with it. Therefore, you have to keep talking about it all the time. So, as much as I don't like it, I'm getting a little tired of it. At the other side of the coin, I'm not, and I
Yeah.
know that I absolutely need to stay totally focused on it. Zero trust is another term I've heard a lot.
Hmm.
Um, it's another one. I can't say I'm getting tired of that one because I do see a lot of value. I think it's a great North Star to head toward, a great framework, a lot of good practical um, approaches that you can take to further improve your knowledge of what's happening on your network regarding identity and reduce access, limited access to only those who need it right at the right time. So there's a couple of these terms that getting kind of old, I'd say long in the tooth, but you cannot ignore some of these. Blockchain, I haven't paid much attention. I
Block
don't know if
what?
you have.
What's
Yeah,
that? I don't.
what are you talking about? Yeah, so
Yeah.
that thing that star faded, but some of these other ones I think are going to be around for a while because I think they have a lot more legitimacy and
Yeah.
things that you and I and others in our field just have to keep focusing on
Yeah.
and treat very seriously.
Yeah. The one good part about zero trust, it's a buzzword that the CEOs and the boards have heard. And
Yeah.
so, then they're like, oh, we need this, and tell me more. And so that part's really good, much like the AI side of things. And now, if you combine the two, let's incorporate zero trust with AI, or make sure that AI is following zero trust. Now you have a much more powerful framework and something to build off of, too. So
That's
you're
a great
enabling the
point.
business and you're securing it. So,
I think that's a great point. These things don't live in isolation, do they? They have a lot of touch points. They have a
right.
lot of overlap in a very healthy way. And for those of us that focus on it, can take advantage of good knowledge in both, will do really well and
Yeah.
protect our organizations really well too.
Yeah. Well, Roftiel, thank you very much for your insights. It was very, very insightful, and I hope our viewers get and listeners get a lot out of that. I definitely did, especially the whole acquisition thing and how to handle that. To me, I think is just something that a lot of people needs to think of, and your insights there is very valuable. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. It's been a pleasure chatting with you this afternoon. And again, congrats to you for this podcast series, for your work with InfraGard, and just being a true leader in our community, and especially in the IT security community here in St. Louis. Thanks.
Thank you for the humble words, and right back there at you, man. You're doing so much there. So, and thank you for your service in the military and all that, and everything that you're doing. So, thank you. For everyone else, be sure to click subscribe, on YouTube as well as on your favorite podcast listening app, and be sure to share this out. Let's get this out. The great messages here from some of the top leaders in the industry, that no matter where you're at in cyber technology or leadership, this has been valuable insights all the way around. So thank you very much. And until next week.
Thank you, Mark. Bye bye.